still think we are instinctively built to be competitive. And I've come from the corporate world. I spent 17 years in Unilever, and Procter & Gamble were the enemy.
The simple fact is that from a sustainability perspective in particular, many instances, you will find a physical cost saving driven by the efficiency they're unlocking.
The 2024 data's just come out. Highest eco-actives number since they started it, which is great because we want to see that growing. So 24% of the global population are now eco-actives.
The sheer amount of point of sale material and packaging that you see in retail events, some of which are executed, some of which are not, it's probably in everyone's interest to come together and say, everyone's losing a bit along the line in terms of profit. What can be done to make those events run so much more smoothly and not create that waste that's created for everyone's benefit?
Welcome to another episode of the Commercial Confidence Podcast. Today we hear from Ali Fisher, the founder of Plans with Purpose. Hear from Ali around how she helps organisations with their sustainability journey, their diversity and inclusion, and generally helping organisations to identify and articulate their purpose. Welcome to the podcast.
Ali.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for your time and joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, maybe if we start with a brief introduction, tell us about yourself and your background.
A little intro, try and keep it short. Many years to cover. So my name is Ali Fisher. My pronouns are she and her. In case anyone is watching who is visually impaired or blind, I'm going to describe what I look like. I'll probably be generous with my description. So I'm white, female. I've seen what everyone else has worn. They've all worn black before for these podcasts, so I'm in black. But I've added, I hope, a little bit of zhuzh. I've got some fern leaves and some butterflies on my black dress. I have long dark hair with some tints of grey, but we'll forget about that for now. So that's a bit of, if you're in the room with us, this is what you'd see.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ali. And tell us about your background.
Right. I'm going to go back a little bit in order to play forward. So I'm going to start with Ali, age 7. So I wanted to be a nurse. Reason why that matters to me is because it was that feeling of I want to do good in the world, I want to give back, and for me that was kind of the vision, the role model of how you did it. I then completely ignored that, worked really hard at school, head down, probably too much, did really well. What do you do if you're doing well? You go to university, studied what I loved, so I loved history, had a very good time at university. Managed to do some studying, but some growing up.
Not too good.
Not too good. Yeah. And then I got to the end of that and I still went, I don't know what I want to do. So I kind of kept following a logical path, applied to some grad schemes. Unilever was one of them, went through the process for some ridiculous point. They took me. That was back in 2000 and I started on the grad scheme. I went into sales. I had no clue about sales, but it looked interesting and exciting. I think it was 9 months on Tesco, and then they put me for a placement into marketing. And I went, actually, marketing is the place I want to be. I struggled a little bit with the feeling of sales, feeling a bit combative, and loved the kind of more collaboration feeling if I'm going to put the two side by side and compare them. So I then stayed in marketing in Unilever for 17 years. A ton of amazing purpose-led brands. So I spent 5 years on Dove, loved that, worked on Persil, worked on Flora Proactive, Heart Health. And then in 2017, I took redundancy, kind of I tried everything except ice cream, and I went, what am I going to do? Had that feeling back to the 7-year-old Ali of, what's my purpose? How am I having impact? And purpose was really the key word because I worked on purpose-led brands and went, how can I take that out to the rest of the world? So I set up Plans with Purpose. Clue is in the title, but quickly realised purpose is brilliant at helping an organisation or a brand stand up for something beyond profit, for people, for planet is great. But if the fundamentals aren't there to underpin it, actually you could be doing damage. So I kind of took myself on a sustainability learning journey, did some studies at Cambridge Uni, and those studies were pivotal. When you go, I want to learn more, I want to kind of feed the fire. So then started working in purpose and sustainability, bringing the old marketing tools from how do you do a strategic lens, how do you look at the landscape, into action planning. Let's have a strategy into action was a real buzz phrase at Unilever. So I've taken that into sustainability. And then the last part of the Plans with Purpose story is working more deeply in equity, diversity and inclusion, because it's a passion, and I found it was sometimes a forgotten piece of sustainability. We often go straight to planet, to environment. People bit's really key, and EDI, as I think of it, is really important to the people piece.
Brilliant.
How was that for 47-year
Perfect.
potted history?
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. That's great. And obviously we first met through a mutual friend.
Yeah.
I described with Sellex what we were trying to do and the kind of business that we wanted to be and to run. So you've really helped us with our purpose side of things. But of course, the conversation's now evolved, and clearly there's lots of consumer goods businesses that aren't as privileged in terms of resources as a Unilever and others. And I think there's a big opportunity, both around purpose but also around sustainability, to help those
100%
organisations demystify some stuff.
Yeah. There's a lot about, I quite often think about it as the top down and the bottom up. Like, a big believer in strategy. So, what are the big things? Where can you make transformational change? But also there's so much power from the grassroots, and the little things do count, and they help everyone be part of the journey. So yeah, both elements are really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've talked a lot around the last 5 years in the workplace. There's lots of material that you can read, but there's not enough maybe collaboration going on in teams to demystify. So I think that role that you play in creating collaboration opportunities, both within businesses and between businesses, is fantastic.
It's such a buzzword for me. Sometimes buzzwords are bad. This is a good buzzword. You cannot say the word collaboration, collaborative enough, and it might feel a bit cheesy, but it's so important. In the world of sustainability in society and environment, we have so much to do. We have some big mountains to climb, and I'm sorry, it's cheesy, but if we do it together, we stand a better chance, and we're going to move forward faster. So
Absolutely.
I'm with you, collaboration is so important.
Yeah. So talk to me about maybe the last 5 or so years with Plans with Purpose. How do you think it's changing? How are people's perspectives changing?
So I'm going to steal a quote. I'm going to borrow a quote. So last week I was at a Be Local Surrey event. So B Corps getting together. I live in Surrey. And we had Douglas Lamont from Tony's Chocolonely. Great chocolate with a great purpose,
Absolutely.
impact-led. And he talked about sustainability being like the tide washing up on the beach. And he said sometimes it doesn't quite wash up as far as we want it to be. And those of us in this space championing this have got the responsibility to keep making sure, even though the tide goes back and recedes sometimes, we've got to keep pushing it and just nudging it further and further up the beach. And you saw everyone in the room breathe in and kind of go, yeah, okay, we need to acknowledge that sometimes we're not moving as fast as we want to in this space, but we need to keep chin up, keep pushing on, and we will get the changes we want and we need.
Rallies your motivation, drives your resilience to keep pushing.
Yeah, and that feeling of community, wherever you find your community, B Corps is a great version, but you can get them in lots of different spaces. Who's your tribe? But, when you're pushing for some of this change, it's hard.
Absolutely.
And if you feel like you're doing it on your own, that's really hard. So finding your community, your tribe really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And something we've talked about a lot is there's a lot of good that needs to be done and can be done, but actually there are commercial benefits here that maybe people don't always fully understand.
Yeah, so often taught, and I've heard you talk about it a lot, the 3 Ps. People, planet, profit, people, planet. I don't mind which order. I'll always say, I'm not going to shy away from profit. I'm not talking to businesses go, that's not an evil word. I want a business to succeed, to thrive, and it needs to financially thrive in order to be there. But it needs to stand for more than just profit and have it in balance, which I will reflect back to you, Anne, and what you've been doing and working with the Sellex purpose, vision, mission. And I think you're doing a really nice job on that of balancing the 3.
No, thank you. And I think ultimately the culture we're trying to create, both internally but also how we feel with clients, is I firmly believe those 3 things are not mutually exclusive. They come together. And hopefully that's how we show up with clients.
Yeah, it's a triangle. Together they're powerful. It's not and or. Yeah. Great.
And from a frustrations perspective, maybe where hasn't it moved on as quickly as you'd like over the last few years?
Can I come back to collaboration?
Yeah.
I still think we are instinctively built to be competitive. And I've come from the corporate world. I spent 17 years in Unilever, and Procter & Gamble were the enemy. And I still struggle to decouple myself. It's so ingrained in you. And it's a business, and we've just talked about profit. I get it. But I feel like there's a time and a place. And we need to be thoughtful of where is collaboration critical, what are the things that we can't go it alone on, or it doesn't make sense to go it alone on. Just let's do it. And actually that would give more breathing space for the bits that you might want to be competitive on, but move faster on the other stuff. So I'd still find that a bit frustrating of, get together, get the heads together, collaborate.
Yeah, absolutely. I genuinely think the retailers have got a bigger role to play within that. So I was talking to someone the other day around the sheer amount of point of sale material and packaging that you see in retail events, some of which are executed, some of which are not. It's probably in everyone's interest to come together and say, everyone's losing a bit along the line in terms of profit. What can be done to make those events run so much more smoothly and not create that waste that's created for everyone's benefit? But still, there's an inertia there around that collaboration.
And I'm a marketer by background, so I'm going to keep coming back to strategy. But if retailers know in the sustainability world, in people, in planet, what they really need to change, what they need to fight for, what's important to them, and each manufacturer knows that, you can marry the two strategically. So then no one's getting dragged along, a bit half-hearted by the other. And maybe I'll come on that journey with you. I'm not really sure. We're struggling to bring people on board. If strategically you've got points that you share, that's when you can really bring energy and resources to it. So I'm a big fan of get your strategy in sustainability. And often the corporates got it. I think all of those big businesses know what they're leading for in sustainability. I worry sometimes the connection's not running through each of the functions to go, how do we plug into it? What do we stand for? What's our big piece of this jigsaw? And I think once you know that, you're empowered to really get into action and go after some big transformative change. Yeah,
and I think we talked previously about kind of category strategies, category vision, something we've both worked on in our time. There's a pivotal role there for those to play in terms of not only where the shopper says they're going, but actually where the shopper's going to be in 10 years' time, and how you help them with that.
It's such an exciting space. And I'd love to see more of people putting that sustainability lens onto category strategies, merchandising, promotional feature, promotional choices. It all has a place to play. I don't know if you've ever read the Nudge book.
No.
One of the nudge tactics is around choice architecture change. Where are you putting things? What are default choices? And the retailer is such an important place. So we're learning more about what are the better choices for people and planet, but are we putting them in front of shoppers?
And making it easy.
Totally. Where people are whizzing around, what is it? They've got like 3 seconds to take anything in, 3 seconds, 3 words. We've got to make it default. We've got to make it easy. And we're working out what the more sustainable choices are, but we've got to put them front and centre.
Yeah. You see refill schemes and pilots on refills, which is quite an extreme, quite cost-hungry way of doing things, but actually merchandising things around sustainability rather than sustainable packaging or refill packaging going next to the master brand. What's the opportunity there? Yeah,
you're right. So all that toolkit you've just described, we've been doing for years and years and years, but we're masters at it. But it's threading sustainability into that thinking. The world of refills and reuse, I'm glad you mentioned it. I think it's really exciting. Reducing waste, reducing packaging, it's ticking so many boxes if we get it right. But it's hard. It's a really big move. And when you look at what shoppers are saying, there's kind of a do-say action gap. So I think, what did I read? 83%, I think, of shoppers are saying, yes, we want it. But in some of the trials they've done, they've had 76% of shoppers who are in a store with the opportunity to take refill and reuse, and they've not done it. Yeah. So they want it, but we're not connecting it. So I fundamentally believe it's really important and we should do it. It's a big lever to pull, but we've got to think really smartly. And I'm going to be really boring and I'm going to come back to collaboration.
Absolutely.
They're big shifts. I don't think we should be playing in silos. And there's at least one project I've seen recently that is retailers and manufacturers and kind of consultants bringing things together in that space rather than going solo. and they're getting some good results.
And I think the pilots that I've seen are in a limited number of stores.
Yeah.
They've not quite worked. There's a big angle around retail execution.
Yeah.
If this is going to go to 400, 500, 600 superstores, and that's only going to come with collaboration on resource, collaboration on ideas, and it's definitely it will remain in the pilot scheme zone unless, of course, there's more collaboration.
Agree. And I think test and learn pilot is great because it's complex, but you're right, we've got to crack it and then be able to scale it. And massively linked to this space of refill and reuse is behaviour change.
Yeah.
And I think, if I could upskill our sector, our area in something, I'd say, go send everyone on a behaviour change course. Just understand. We kind of get it. I mean, it's all quite instinctive when you break it down, but we've got to think of, it's back to that simplicity for the shopper. But we've got to unlock every single barrier, every single pain point, and then this stuff will take off.
The great irony is it's the way we shopped 100 years ago, and yet we've moved into that space of removing cost from retail and making it really efficient to shop and easy to replenish. But it can't be impossible to re-engage on it.
And what a golden moment that we've got shoppers, the majority of shoppers wanting this. How often you kind of trying to pull them into your space, excite them. They are excited. We've just got to deliver.
Yeah, make it live up to that promise.
But I'm really hoping next couple of years, I think we can crack it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that'd be amazing.
No, it's exciting. So when it comes to those smaller organisations that you work with that maybe don't have that resource of a Unilever or a P&G, how are you finding things are evolving for them?
Oh, good question. I mean, this is where it's into sustainability is so broad, isn't it? The people, the planet piece. You go back to test and learn, like same, start small, test something, try it. There's a beauty in being smaller, isn't there? If you can be more agile, you can test some stuff. Again, it comes back to collaboration. If you're smaller, you've got less resources, you've got to think smarter. So I've been working with an amazing collective in the equity, diversity, inclusion space. I'm going to plug them. Is that shameless?
Absolutely.
Am I allowed to do that?
Not shameless at all.
So the Jedi Masters Collective is 7 SMEs who've come together and gone, we know we can't make enough change on equity, diversity, inclusion, or as we call it, Jedi, on our own. So let's work together. We run joint events, joint training, and it's amazing. And it's that piece of together we are going faster and having impact. Yeah,
it's amazing because we've talked quite a bit about it, and I always get your passion from it, but it's great that some great forward-thinking leaders in those organisations recognise they know what they need to do. They may not have the resources to do it, so they've come together. There was a really interesting article in the Sunday papers about 3 weeks ago from the CEO of Timothy Taylor, the brewer.
Yeah.
And he talked about, with changes in legislation, changes in working practices, even as a £30 million business, they struggle to change and keep abreast of changes.
Yeah.
So I think the more collaboration that goes on within that SME environment, the better. And the progressive leaders are really engaging with it and embracing it.
Yeah. A bit of a segue on that. I think one of the things that's really important, and I feel like I must have had this conversation 3 times this week with different people already in different spaces, but being brave. So particularly in sustainability at a total level, but particularly in equity, diversity and inclusion, most people, and I'll include myself, you're nervous, you're scared, you don't want to say the wrong thing. But Jedi's a good example where people have gone, we've got to do it. We've got to try. We've got to be brave, best foot forward, and acknowledge we won't get everything right, but we're trying, and that's how we're going to move forward. Yeah,
and I think we had a conversation earlier this week where we've both been in situations where, do I intervene in this way? Am I about to put my foot in my mouth? But if you do it and then you just push yourself forward a little bit every time, then you'll make progress.
Yeah, and learning together. We've had some examples where other people have helped us and stepped in and gone, did you mean that? Could we explain that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Together.
Fantastic. So what's the future for Plans with Purpose? Where's it going?
A lot of energy at the moment in the equity, diversity, inclusion space. I did a course at Cambridge Uni a couple of years ago, and one of my, talk about aha moments, was it feels like a difficult space, But actually, when you kind of study it and you look at the tools, there are so many levers for change. And that really excites me, that you go, just need to engage with it. There are things we can do. It's often in this space you can feel a bit hopeless, you can feel a bit overwhelmed. So I get excited when you look at a toolkit and you go, oh, there's low-hanging fruit here. And a lot of it sits in education and building people's confidence. You and I have done EDI training together, and just going, oh no, actually we can do this. We can be braver in this space.
Yeah, and I know from yourself and a few other people, I'm an avid reader, and it was always on kind of leadership behaviours or economic theories.
Yeah.
But actually more and more recommendations on books. Now you've brought some with you today. Some of those recommendations have been fantastic for me, coming from a relatively low level of understanding, particularly about sustainability.
Yeah.
It's really accelerated my learning, made me hungrier for more. And I know donut economics is one that I think you mentioned it to me first, and then everyone I speak to now says, have you read Donut Economics? So I think that's a great example of a great entry point. If people are nervous, it's a great entry point.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm gonna plug someone. My partner Nancy Hine, who we work together on Donut Economics, and is brilliant, a brilliant energy. Donut Economics is a brilliant theory. Kate Rayworth developed in 2012. But what do we need to do with theory? Well, we need to act on it. And she set up the Donut Economics Action Lab deal in 2019 and built workshops for businesses. So what Nancy and I have been doing is, in loads of totally different spaces with different people, running those one-day workshops. A few of the things that are different that I think have excited you about it is looking at people and planet together.
Absolutely.
So often we look at them in silo, but actually it's quite cathartic when you map everything, kind of flush out, what am I doing well? Let's acknowledge that. And what am I not doing? What am I struggling with? And then it's like a jigsaw puzzle that starts to come together, and you see the connections. And what the workshop's designed to do is, in one day, push you to go find one transformative idea. There'll be tons of stuff in there, but what can you really go after? We need systemic change. Great, do the stuff. We were talking before about the top down and the bottom up. This is a top down moment. This is go after something really impactful. And we've proven time and time again that in one session, you can do that.
Yeah.
And that's really galvanising for people.
Absolutely. And the simple fact is that, from a sustainability perspective in particular, many instances you will find a physical cost saving driven by the efficiency they're unlocking. May not pay back on day one, but if you make the right business case, it will pay back over time. They're just not mutually exclusive, and so many people I think still think it's hard, which it is, but it's not impossible. But also there are cost savings to be made if you make the right choices.
It's a really good point, and it's back to that kind of segmentation of society. So we've got. So I don't know if you read the Kantar Who Does, Who Cares Who Does.
Yeah.
Love that survey. So the 2024 data's just come out. Highest eco-actives number since they started it, which is great because we want to see that growing. So 24% of the global population are now eco-actives. So nearly a quarter, really driving, really pushing. But that's still the minority. So you've still got 76% they're engaged, but they're not leading for it, or we've not engaged them yet. So your point around the kind of co-benefits, I think sometimes a lot of the people leading in this space are the eco-actives.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are going to go, no matter what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make the green choice. I will sacrifice. 76% of people are not in that space. So your point on co-benefits, what are the other things? Don't just talk to them about the eco side. In fact, more often than not, talk to them about the other benefits first, whether it's through your marketing, your communications, whether it's internally. What are all the things that make a difference and have a positive impact? If it's cost savings, great. Let's talk about it. This is a business, it's an organisation. That's a win. If that engages a lot of people, great, win-win.
Yeah, put that benefit first, and then slowly over time demonstrate the wider benefits.
And you're still doing the right thing and having the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And we've spent quite a lot of time talking about the purpose of the Sellex organisation. We've talked a lot on that space. How have you seen people evolving their thinking around the purpose of their organisation in the broadest sense?
Oh, good question. I think it's kind of the threading together. So I think early on there was a bit of, purpose was a bit of a buzzword. Maybe like 10 years ago, even maybe 15 years ago, and it grew and it grew and it grew. But there was always a danger with that it was standalone. So, you're picking something that purpose works really well when it's doing what is the strength of your organisation plus a real life issue, something big, and you bring the two of them together to make a real difference. That's great. But if it's totally disconnected from everything in the sustainability space, doesn't work. So, but maybe this is wishful thinking of what I want, but I think it's those things, yes, a purpose at the heart, but then a circle running underneath or all around the outside that is the sustainability of people and planet threaded through everything. For me, that's the journey we need to be on.
So a lot of my frame of reference in my day-to-day work, or Sellex's day-to-day work, is UK and developed markets in the food and drink and health and beauty space. And clearly, not many retailers, very, very competitive.
Yeah.
And inevitably, any business is a focus on the short term. So I'd be interested to understand your view where, if you feel like you're a bit of a lone voice in an organisation around purpose, around sustainability, what would your advice be for someone to try to push the boundaries and try to raise awareness of how you can do both?
Oh, good question. I think it depends who it is, doesn't it? Some of it depends on personality, what's comfortable to you. I'm going to go a bit traditional. I think getting guest speakers in. I still think businesses like that there's a respect, isn't there, of if someone comes in from outside and it's if there's someone who's got good energy and suddenly everyone in the room's feeling the vibe, I think that's great. I think a bit like when we were talking earlier about co-benefits, don't be afraid to use different language, like, yes, champion the energy. Don't be afraid to be, yes, that person's a sustainability champion. I know that's really important to them, but also make sure you're using the business language. Yeah. And something I hear us talking about more and more, which I think is right, is risk. Business understands risk, and a lot of the areas in people and planet is risk. If we don't act now, if we don't act fast enough, or if we don't think big enough, then we've got risk. So it's not trying to hit some almighty panic button, but it's a different way to have a conversation with a business that businesses understand. Yeah. And I think the third one would be network. Find a tribe. You don't want to feel like a lone wolf. That's hard work, that's energy zapping. So whether it's internally connections and bringing people together, or externally finding people, how do you keep learning together, keep your energy up? If it feels like you're having to push a bit hard internally, that can make a big difference.
Yeah. I think also voice of the customer. So the simple fact is that there's a challenge, but also an opportunity on having such a concentration of customers, particularly in the UK market.
Yeah.
The retailers are very clear on where they need to get to and where you as a supplier need to get to. Maybe there's need for more cross-manufacturer collaboration, but it's a real North Star to follow because they're very, very clear on what they're trying to achieve and their expectation on suppliers. So bringing the voice of the customer in is important too.
So, that's bread and butter, isn't it? Yeah. Being customer-centric, the voice of the customer first. And that is sustainability. It's, you are putting the voice and the needs of your customers front and foremost, and it's a common language that we all get.
Yeah, absolutely. So wanted maybe to change the conversation a little bit. I'm fascinated by the Ali Fisher, the Plans with Purpose entrepreneurial journey. So 7.5 years now?
Yeah.
Talk to me about the first couple of years, how it's evolved, where you've found mentors, supporters. Where have you taken your learnings from as you've changed from corporate to entrepreneur?
Yeah, maybe a nice way to bring it to life is kind of the aha moments.
Yeah.
Where did I get momentum in my journey? And one was in my first clients. And then, there's a couple of different examples. But the thing I realised, I'd been in corporate for a long time. It's very different. And what I realised was you've just got to go out there with something that might feel a bit half-baked. I'm definitely in the perfectionist camp. It's like, I don't have all the answers. But actually, you can do some great work by, yes, you've got knowledge, but you've got to put yourself out there and really push yourself. And then you get the validation back when your client goes, yeah, brilliant. So that just being brave, you got to go out there and test it. And, that gets momentum quite quickly. another experience that was quite pivotal for me, and I need to re-find this lady. There was a specialist coach in sustainability, and she and I somehow connected and had one coffee, and I can picture the room we were in. And I think I was about 18 months into my journey, and I was going, I don't know where I'm going. Some people were asking me the question of, are you building an agency? And I was like, no, I don't think. I just want to have an impact and pay the mortgage and enjoy what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be grandiose, but I also no longer had my Unilever corporate, here's the next level you're going for. And I was finding it a bit confusing. And she had this amazing coaching analogy. And she just said, look, you're in a deep, dark forest and it feels a bit scary and you don't know what's around the corner. But you can still look up and you can still see blue sky, so be reassured. And is that bad a thing? As long as you don't think there's a wolf around the corner or a bear, it could be a surprise. And actually it completely flipped my mindset. And I suddenly went, actually, I'm going to embrace this uncertainty. And the fact that every project I do is different is a great thing. And actually in this, I no longer feel I need this kind of massive long-term plan. This space is different, and it was such a good mindset shift for me. So it's a prompt to go just talking to people. Sometimes you go in, you don't know, you've got some connection, some link, but those conversations can be so powerful.
Yeah, and I think it's finding people, we talked about this the other day, finding people with a completely different perspective on things to you, very different lived experience, the amazing things that can come out of that conversation. But then on the flip side, identify your friends who care about you enough to give you some tough love.
Yeah.
So I've got 3 or 4 mentors, they know who they are, that will really say, what are you doing, what are you thinking, and just help you to recenter, because it's a bit lonelier than the corporate existence, isn't it? But those people that care about you enough to give you some tough love are invaluable.
There's the people give you tough love, 100% agree, and then I think if you've got a couple of like A-class champions. Cheerleaders. Yeah. There's a couple of people in my 7.5 years who've just always had my back. They're the types of people who give you a recommendation. It's a subtle recommendation, but you suddenly get someone coming to you and saying, oh yeah, I've been recommended by them. And you having a couple of those people keeps your energy going from a business point of view, and personally, they're kind of those... it's just rocket fuel.
I think if you've been in a corporate environment for a long time, or a very tough competitive environment, you may not realise how generous people are with their time, their advice, their connections.
Massively.
That's been a real eye-opener for me. People are inherently very, very kind.
And it's one of the key pieces of advice I give to other people who are people quite often come and say, can I have a chat? I'm thinking about doing something differently, and always have a chat. And often they're nervous, and I was like this when I left Unilever, nervous about taking people's time. I said, you've got to realise it's really important for you from a learning point of view, from building a network, but those people will really enjoy their time with you. Giving that time and knowing you've made that difference is a gift. So if you see it that way around, it's less intimidating, and just go do that as much as you can.
I think 95% of people say, I can't do it now, but give me 2 weeks. But I will. And I've had so few people say, I'm really sorry, I'm far too busy. So it's reinstalled my faith in sort of people's generosity.
I totally agree. And you also mentioned the role of mentors.
Yes.
And how have those buddies, how do you find them? Interestingly, one of the ways I found them is on courses. In no way deliberately, but I can think of probably 3 people that we've just been on the same course, we've heard each other and connected a little bit and gone, let's pick up outside. Nancy's one of them. Yeah. And then you've ended up, as kind of partners in crime a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I never would have thought that was the source, but it makes sense. You've connected through something common and then kept something going afterwards.
But may have come to that training programme or that course with a very different background, which is exciting as well, isn't it?
Nancy's an engineer or a marketeer. Totally different, but the blend is good.
It works.
It does. The other tip I've got is walks and talks. So I don't know if you're the same, but if I'm having a one-to-one with someone and we don't need a screen, I will get out the house because it's good for my mental health, fresh air, nature, and my brain thinks differently. When I'm listening to someone's voice and I'm walking and moving, I just have got more freedom of thought. So they've been quite catalysing for me at certain times.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip, because there is that compulsion to, I'm at my desk, I'm being productive. When you really,
Stay here.
when you really challenge yourself, if you've been at your desk since 7 and it's now 2 in the afternoon, your productivity is definitely diminishing, and go and do something different.
And the physical movement
Yeah.
is helpful and gets your blood flowing again. Yeah, absolutely.
We've mentioned the books. I'd love you just to talk to us about some of those sources of great inspiration that maybe people that are just entering into that sustainability journey, they've got some nervousness, they want to build their commercial confidence, as we say.
Yeah.
Where would you recommend they go?
You're being very kind, because I've lugged those books here and I need to talk about them.
To talk about them.
There's so many different sources. So I'm a big fan of podcasts. We've got a dog, so I love walking the dog and listening to good podcasts. Outrage and Optimism is a really good one. So there's an amazing leader, Christiana Figueres, who was the arch negotiator. I talk about negotiators in this space of the 2015 Paris Agreement. Yeah. So she brought 196 countries together and got them to agree to keeping climate change below 2 degrees, if not 1.5 degrees. So Outrage and Optimism, and she's got a great book, which off the top of my head I can't think what it's called, but the book and the podcast are brilliant. If you're personally on your sustainability journey, Jen Gale, Sustainable-ish, is really nice for the lifestyle stuff. She's really gentle on you. She goes, you don't need perfection. It's a journey. Yeah. And there's a lovely one, which is more in the marketing space, called Can Marketing Save the Planet?, which is quite business focused, but always really, really good. My books. So if you want a really good sustainability coffee table book, I'd go for my Paul Hawken Project Drawdown. Really good. He goes, by 2050, it's Paul Hawken and a bunch of scientists, so it's really great thinking. What are the top 50 things that we need to do? So it's solutions focused, but it's also big picture, because it's going by 2050. And some of them, we were talking about it earlier, some surprise you. I'll go the opposite end of the scale on books. How Bad Are Your Bananas? By Mike Berners-Lee. Just a great reference book for those carbon footprint questions that people like you and I might ask, but more and more people are asking. If you can just look anything up in that, and it gives you a sense of comparative footprint.
We talked about produce, so tomatoes, fundamentally where your tomatoes are grown, when they're grown.
Greenhouse, seasonal, tells you.
Big difference.
Yeah,
absolutely. We'll put all of the books in the notes for the podcast, so people can access them.
Awesome.
And take them up.
The other thing I'd add is, inside an organisation, what can you do to get going? There's a classic one of, can you take a project? There will be stuff going on. If sustainability is not core of what you do now, how can you pull something into your remit that is? And have you got sustainability or equity, diversity, inclusion champions? Always looking for that. Can that be part of your role?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Keep learning and keep championing.
Yeah, and keep pushing. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ali, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks again.